Marama Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this weekend my son, Whatahoro, marries his love, Tamariki, at our marae at Huranui Orangi. It is home. Home, the place of our hearts, the place where our hearts return, the centre of our heritage and history, the basis of all we are. The dictionary definition of home is that social unit formed by a family living together, a familiar or usual setting, a place of origin. It is therefore with the thought of home that I come to this legislation, the Children, Young Persons and Their Families Oranga Tamariki Bill. At the centre of the ceremonies this weekend will be my mokopuna. Although just a babe, he is surrounded by a loving legacy of kahungunu and wanganui. His waiata are sung to him, and already he understands the distinctive mita of his relations, the sacred spaces, and the stories that are his. And I contrast that to the situation for my moko with a young man speaking of his experiences in care, and I quote, "For my first 5 years in care, I was beaten every day. I experienced fear every day. The day after the funeral of my father, I was picked up and placed in a new home. It took 12 years of letter writing to find my sister. There would be a standard 2 to 3 weeks delay to contact a social worker. I would disclose to the social worker, then go home and get beaten up again. No child anywhere in any care should have to live through such abuse. Safety must never be compromised. In exactly the same vein, no child should ever be disconnected from the very essence of who they are. Mana tamariki, whakapapa, the love and connection of whānau are absolutely fundamental to a child's ability to grow into strong, confident, healthy adults. Mr. Speaker, if there is one group of New Zealanders who deserve our utmost respect, it is those young people who were brave enough to speak of their experience to the expert panel last year. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence associated with the expert panel's final report was a postcard from a youth advisory panel member. One half of the postcard was a design with 3 simple words: I am Māori. The other half contained a letter, and I'm going to quote that letter. Dear Antoli, when you read the final report over Christmas, I'd like you to think about the importance of keeping whānau connections to keep the child's identity intact and supply them with the support needed to do so. This is important as a child should know where they are from, where they come from, and know that there are people out there who love them. This identity is not just where the child comes from and what culture they are, it's everything that makes them who they are. There is nothing more important to tangata whenua than to know where they come from, who we are, what our connections are, and where we belong to. In this respect, we are proud and positive about the new purposes of the bill, which recognise mana tamaiti or tamariki, whakapapa and whanaungatanga of the Māori children and young person. But, and it is a major but, there is a particular word that appears over and over again throughout the bill that diminishes the intent of these very significant words. The bill promotes a child-centred approach that is culturally authentic and successful in delivering improved outcomes for Māori children, young persons and whānau. That's great. That's great until we get to Part 1, Section 8, when we learn that the informal networks and supports of a child or young person and their family are acknowledged and, where practicable, utilised. Excuse me? When is it not practicable to understand the value and birthright, the genealogical connection, the power of the family connection to our children? And then we are told the importance of whakapapa and whanaungatanga is recognised by ensuring that wherever possible their whānau, hapu and iwi can participate in those decisions. But later on in Part 1, Clause 13, it says where a child or person is at risk of being removed from their immediate family, whānau, or usual caregivers, the child's or young person's usual caregivers, family, whānau, hapu, iwi, and family group should, unless it is unreasonable or impracticable in the circumstances, be assisted to enable them to a safe, stable, loving home, as if those two things can be separated. And I thought we were putting the child at the centre. I thought we were listening to the child and making it most important that everything they need is contained in their care and protection, but only when it's practicable or reasonable or appropriate. Mr. Speaker, we did fight very hard for the last 6 months to even have these words put in the bill. Whakapapa, whanaungatanga, mana tamariki, only to have them qualified by practicable, weakened by appropriate, given some sort of determination by when reasonable. Mr. Speaker, there is a really significant new responsibility introduced to the bill that broadens and clarifies the duties of the Chief Executive to provide a practical commitment to the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi. No provisos, no qualifiers, not when practicable, but always, because it is always important that a child have the right and the ability to know who they are, what their identity is, and from the mouth of the children themselves they have said so. Practicable denotes capable of doing something if the circumstances are favourable, being viable, feasible, all well and good, but we know it is that whenever there is legislative flexibility, so too will officialdom exercise that flexibility. Resources, children's needs are paramount. And if the question of resourcing is associated with understand whether a certain action is practicable about finding their whakapapa and their whānau connection, we all know what the decision makers will do. If there is any indecisive hesitancy that we as the Māori Party cannot support this bill to the first reading, if somebody is going to question, do I have enough time? Is there enough resource? And am I going to spend too much time filling in a piece of paper to bother to find this children's whānau? If mana tamaiti, whakapapa and whanaungatanga stand for something, then it will and must be done. We cannot be drawn into a debate about bureaucracy, about whether there is enough time, whether in all reasonable circumstances we should give heed to that message. It is part of who we are. It is intrinsic in every part of us. And when we strip that away from our tamariki, when we go to place them forever with another family, and we might promote their whakapapa, so I can give you a book about it and a picture, because that's promoting, or do I need to recognise and provide for? The little words in this bill are significant and important. And yes, the Māori Party has sat at the table and we have done everything. There would not be a treaty clause in this bill had we not been at that table. And for some people in the National Party, they might think that that would be better. But if 63% of Māori children make up the children in SIFs, if 63% of those children are Māori, if 71% of the children in prison, young people in prison, are Māori, we are the mainstream. Should not have a Māori issues paper on the side to decide what we might do or might not do. The entire makeup, the entire structure, the entire rebuild of the SIFs needs to be done in accordance with Māori principles, because what's happened is a systematic failure where even the Commissioner for Children said some of those children would have been better off staying in their abusive families than going into SIFs care. In fact, going into SIFs care has been detrimental to them, more likely to fall out of school without a qualification, more likely to be arrested, more likely to be incarcerated, more likely to be abused in state care. That is double jeopardy. We cannot repeat the tragedy of the past. We cannot have a new stolen generation by removing links to whakapapa in this new design. It wasn't Māori families that failed all of their children. The system has failed all of their children. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, I want to say it's not a question of a safe, loving, stable home or a Māori home, as if they are not mutually exclusive. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We cannot support this bill.